This is not motivation. This is a reckoning. Right now, as you sit and breathe, there is a quiet war happening within you. A war not fought with noise, but with hesitation. Not with fire, but with silence. It's the battle between who you are and who you pretend to be, between the man you were meant to become and the ghost you keep alive by clinging to comfort, excuses, and fear. You don't need an enemy to sabotage your life. You're already doing it quietly every time you hit later instead of now. Every time you say, "That's just how I am." Every time you let the voice of fear cast the deciding vote. No one is holding you back more than the story you keep repeating to yourself. That weak version of you, the one who avoids the hard conversations, who scrolls instead of builds, who hesitates instead of moves, he isn't just costing you time, he's stealing your future. One small surrender at a time. He's not loud. He doesn't yell. He whispers. He sounds reasonable. And that's what makes him dangerous. He convinces you that this version of life is good enough, that someday will eventually arrive, that growth can wait. But truth doesn't whisper. It rings like a bell in a quiet room. And here it is, the man you're meant to be cannot be born until the man you used to be is buried. This is the moment, right now. You either begin killing that version of yourself, cutting away the decay, dismantling the justifications, or you let it kill the only thing that matters, your potential. You've seen the cost of standing still. Now, witness what begins when you stop negotiating with weakness. This isn't a pep talk. It's a funeral. And you're the one holding the shovel. Who is this enemy we speak of? He's not a stranger. He doesn't break down your door or shout threats across the battlefield. He whispers from the mirror. He borrows your voice. He is the master of hesitation, the artist of delay, the one who turns every ambition into maybe later, every spark of courage into another reason to wait. He wears many masks: self-doubt, perfectionism, victimhood. But they all serve one goal: preservation of comfort. You see him when you avoid responsibility, when you settle for distraction over depth, when you scroll endlessly instead of building something real. He's there when you keep rereading messages you'll never send, when you keep returning to the pain that no longer belongs in your present. That's not healing. That's clinging. That's camouflage. This enemy within doesn't fight in obvious ways. He's a master of subtlety. He uses your memories against you, your failures as handcuffs, your fears as guiding stars. And he always offers one deal: just stay where you are. It's safe here. It's familiar. You can grow tomorrow. But tomorrow is his favorite lie. He trades your potential for comfort like a merchant of lost time. The Stoics taught that to live is to face ourselves unflinchingly. But how often do you really look, not at your reflection, but behind your eyes? Behind the polite smiles, the well-worded justifications, the soft-spoken, "not yet." What are you defending? Your peace or your prison? Ask yourself with full honesty, am I growing or am I just surviving inside a padded cell. I've learned to decorate with excuses. The weak self isn't some monster. He's the old script you keep reciting out of habit. And like any well-worn path, it feels easier to follow than to carve a new one. But understand this, the longer you walk beside him, the more you become him. And the more you become him, the harder it is to remember you ever had another choice. The ancient Stoics didn't speak in riddles. They spoke in mirrors, reflecting back the truths we spend our whole lives avoiding. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for applause. He wrote them for war against his own mind, against distraction, against comfort, and most of all, against the parts of himself that clung to pride, anger, fear, and false identity. You have power over your mind, he said, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That wasn't a poetic suggestion. That was a blueprint for internal revolution. Epictetus sharpened it further. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. It sounds simple until you try it. Until you realize that becoming someone new requires letting the old self die. And death, even metaphorical death, is always met with resistance. What they understood, and what most men still don't, is that transformation begins not with addition, but with subtraction. You don't become stronger by piling on more habits, more books, more knowledge. You become stronger when you subtract illusion, when you dissolve excuses, when you incinerate the narratives that say you were never meant to change. That is the philosophical death the Stoics spoke of, not the end of life, but the end of a story. The story of the man who believed he was stuck. The story of the man who mistook survival for purpose. That story dies the moment you realize every obstacle, every struggle is not in your way, it is the way. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That single line from Aurelius is not a metaphor. It's a command, a challenge, a reorientation of everything we fear. The discomfort you've been running from. That's not your punishment. It's your proving ground. That conversation you're avoiding. That's your next step. The pain, the failure, the resistance. That's the door to your next life. But the key is fire. And you must be willing to burn who you were to become who you were meant to be. Your life is not just shaped by what you do. It's shaped more dangerously by what you say to yourself when no one is listening. Every identity begins as a sentence. A whisper repeated long enough becomes a truth you no longer question. I've always been like this. I'm not good with people. I never follow through. These aren't just passing thoughts. They're incantations. Spells you cast, daily words that quietly turn your potential into limitation. What you say is what you script, and the script becomes the shape of your life. Most people don't need external enemies. They've already been trained to surrender by the inner narrator that tells them their effort is pointless, that their past defines their limits, that comfort is safety and discomfort is danger. But the Stoics would laugh at this modern softness. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The prison isn't around you. It's the language that lives within you. And yet language can also become the sword that sets you free. Reframing is not a trick. It's a transformation. It's what happens when you catch a limiting phrase before it takes root. When you hear yourself say, "I always mess this up," and instead replace it with, "I'm still learning this." One closes the door, the other builds a path. These are not affirmations. They are declarations of authorship. When you reframe your words, you reclaim the pen. A Stoic doesn't say, "I'm doomed." He says, "This is an opportunity to practice fortitude." He doesn't say, "I'm broken." He says, "I'm rebuilding." Every phrase you speak about yourself is a vote for weakness or for growth, for who you were or who you're becoming. So pay close attention. The words you speak in passing are not harmless. They are bricks either in the prison walls of your old self or in the foundation of your future. The next time you speak to yourself, ask, am I reinforcing the cage or unlocking the door? Discipline is not glamorous. It does not applaud you. It does not comfort you. It does not care how you feel. And that is precisely why it is holy. Most people live as slaves to their mood. They wait to feel ready, inspired, confident. But the man becoming unbreakable does not wait. He moves regardless. Not because it feels good, but because he made a vow to never again serve the version of himself that begged for ease. The old self is clever. He shows up when the bed is warm, when the doubts are loud, when the task is dull. He whispers, "Just skip today. You deserve rest. What's one more day?" But the Stoic answers with action, not argument. He rises. He works. Not because it's easy, but because it's time. You don't live by feelings. You live by standards. That is the turning point, the chisel that carves the new self. Discipline is not punishment. It is precision. It's the sacred repetition of action aligned with principle. A daily ritual of declaring, "This is who I am now," especially on the days when nothing in you wants to believe it, especially when no one is watching. It is in those silent, invisible hours, the early mornings, the tired evenings, the overlooked efforts that a man rebuilds himself. Like a blacksmith, hammering in solitude, shaping steel with fire and rhythm. This is how you kill the old self. Not in one heroic act, but in 1,000 quiet victories. By choosing progress over pleasure. By showing up tired, unsure, and unmotivated, and doing it anyway. You don't become free by chasing comfort. You become free by mastering the muscle that resists it. Seneca said, "Only the disciplined are truly free." And he was right. Discipline is the whip that shatters laziness, the blade that cuts through delay, the shield that deflects excuses. This is your sacred duty to show up, especially when it's hardest. To act, not because it feels good, but because your future depends on it. The strongest warriors are not made on the battlefield. They are forged in silence when no one is watching, when the stakes feel small and the reward is invisible. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, often slept on the floor, wore coarse clothing, and ate the simplest of meals, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He practiced hardship, not as punishment, but as preparation. He knew that the man who trains without comfort is the only one who doesn't fall apart when comfort is gone. Modern life has tricked us into thinking that ease is the goal. But what we don't realize is this ease atrophies character. Comfort makes cowards of men. Discomfort, deliberately chosen, is not pain. it is preconditioning. It teaches the mind to endure when the body protests. It builds a spirit that doesn't flinch when the world shifts. A cold shower in the morning, a skipped meal, waking before the sun, walking in silence without your phone, these may seem small, but they are weights for the soul, reps for the will, resistance training for resilience. Each act of voluntary hardship is a statement I am not ruled by cravings. You are reminding yourself that you are still the master of the machine, not its passenger. There is a quiet strength that grows in men who do hard things no one else sees. They walk differently. They speak with less noise and more weight. Why? Because they've bled in private. They've buried their excuses beneath cold water and early alarms. The Stoics believed that adversity reveals character, but even more voluntary adversity builds it. So train when you're tired. Say no when the craving screams yes. Do something once a week that makes you uncomfortable on purpose. Not to suffer, but to sharpen. Because one day, the real storm will come. And you will either be the man who hoped to be ready or the man who is. Discomfort is not punishment. It's preparation. And only the prepared survive the fire. Blame is the oldest shield of the weak self. It is sharp, seductive, and perfectly designed to make you feel like a victim while sounding reasonable. It's never your fault, is it? It was your upbringing, your boss, your ex, the economy, the timing, the weather, the alignment of stars. Blame speaks with elegance. It wears a scholar's robe and cites evidence. It builds a courtroom inside your head where you're always innocent and the world is always guilty. But here's the truth. The longer you hold on to blame, the longer you remain bound to the past. Every time you point the finger outward, you abandon the only place true power has ever existed within. Blame feels good because it removes responsibility. It offers comfort without confrontation. But what it actually removes is your ability to change. You can't change what you won't own, and you won't own what you've already outsourced to others. The Stoics were merciless toward the blame game. They taught that while we may not be the authors of our past, we are the architects of what comes next. You are not responsible for what happened, but you are responsible for what happens next. Read that again. That statement is not a burden, it's liberation. It means you're no longer waiting for the world to apologize before you start moving forward. You don't need a perfect explanation to begin building a better life. The weak self thrives on blame. It's his favorite weapon because it keeps him blameless, motionless, and harmless. The strong self, however, picks up a different weapon: ownership. Ownership says, I didn't cause this storm, but I will decide how I walk through it. Ownership doesn't seek pity. It builds direction. So the next time you're tempted to blame, pause. Look in the mirror, not with guilt, but with clarity. Trace the pattern, and then choose the only power path left. Not who did this to me, but what can I do with this now? Responsibility is not a punishment. It is the birthplace of power. There comes a moment when a man stops asking, why did this happen to me? And starts asking, what will I do with it now? That moment is the funeral of the victim and the birth of the builder. Ownership is not about blame. It's about reclaiming authorship. It's about standing in front of the chaos of your life, your broken habits, your stalled goals, your silent compromises, and saying, "This is mine now. I will shape it." And that shaping begins with a simple but ruthless practice self-inventory. Tonight, take out a piece of paper. Write down 3 things in your life that make you uncomfortable, disappointed, or frustrated. Then, instead of writing who caused them, write how you've allowed them. Where did you stay silent? Where did you delay action? Where did you settle when you should have stood? This is not self-blame. This is self-liberation. Because the moment you say, "I contributed to this," you unlock the door to changing it. The Stoics knew we are not the sum of what happens to us. We are the sum of how we respond to it. The weak self waits for a sign, for perfect timing, for someone to hand him permission. But the man who takes total ownership knows the truth. No one is coming. And no one needs to. Because the pen is already in your hand. And from this point forward, you no longer write as a passenger, you write as the architect. From this point forward, you build a life no one can take from you. Not because it's easy, not because you feel ready, but because you finally stopped outsourcing your destiny and chosen to carry it. The future does not belong to the most gifted. It belongs to those who dare to own it. There comes a time in every warrior's path when he must stop sharpening the blade and bury the past he no longer serves. This is not metaphor. This is ceremony. You've fought. You've confronted the ghost. You've rewritten the scripts, reclaimed ownership, chosen discomfort, and demanded more from yourself than ever before. But before the next chapter begins, there is one final act left. You must bury the man who brought you this far. He was not a villain. He carried you. He endured pain you didn't know how to name. He made mistakes, yes, but he also tried. He kept you alive. But now, he is in your way. Rituals mark transitions, not because they are magical, but because they give meaning to change. They signal to your psyche that something sacred has shifted. And so I ask you, write a letter tonight, not to someone else, but to the man you no longer wish to be. Thank him, then release him. Burn the paper if you must. Read it aloud if you dare. But mark this moment. Then write one sentence, a vow, a standard, something you will live by when the old voice tries to return. A line that draws the boundary between who you were and who you are. And when you're done, sit in the silence. Not with grief, but with clarity. A chapter has closed. The soil has covered the casket. The grave is still. But you are not. You rise from it not as a better version, but as a new man. Defined not by the past you survived, but by the standard you now uphold. And when someone asks what changed, you will not explain. You will simply say, "I buried my old self today. The past is now sealed. The old self has been laid to rest, not with hatred, but with honor. He served his time. He carried his weight. But he is no longer fit to lead the man you are becoming." This is the new era of you. And in this new era, you no longer live by moods, emotions, or fleeting impulses. You live by code, by standard, by something unshakable written not in ink, but in action. You don't ask, "Do I feel like it today?" You declare, "This is what I do now." Because this is who I am. You're not the man who waits. You are the one who moves. The one who shows up, sharpens, chooses the harder road not for attention, but because that's the only road that leads somewhere real. This is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about choosing again and again to live according to the man you promised to become. So write it down, not just your goals, but your ground rules. Who you'll be when things get hard, what you'll do when no one is watching, what you'll no longer tolerate from yourself. This isn't just writing, it's construction. Every sentence is a brick. And when the world pushes back, and it will, don't flinch, don't fold, don't fall into old scripts. Stand tall in the fire. Speak softly with steel in your spine, and walk forward as if the weight you carry has been earned because it has. This is your new identity, not found but forged. So now, say it with certainty, not as a wish, but as a command. I no longer serve the weak version of me. I build the man I was born to be. Let's build him. Let's become him. And this time, we don't look back.